Good morning and welcome to the National Newspaper Publishers Association's Let It Be Known. It is Wednesday, July 13th, 2022. The governor of Arizona has signed a measure into law that makes it illegal for people to record videos within 8 feet of police activity, limiting efforts to increase transparency around law enforcement. Also, following yesterday's January 6th committee hearings, Representative Liz Cheney announced that after following damaging testimony during the last hearing, Donald Trump tried to contact a witness. One, she says, we haven't heard from. Liz Cheney says the witness contacted their lawyer and their lawyer contacted us. Cheney reported that they have referred it to the DOJ as more key figures in the MAGA world have now decided to offer more testimony that most believe have exposed the former president to potential criminal prosecution. The panel also clearly connected Trump and his aides to far-right groups, including the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers. We discussed all of that this morning with a great panel. Attorney Robert Tarver of the Tarver Law Firm in Jersey joins us, as well as Robin Massengill. Mark Make It Plain Thompson is with us, and James Wright of the Washington Informer. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I want to jump right out of the gate with our great attorney, Robert Tarver. Liz Cheney said that Trump has attempted to contact witnesses, has contacted witnesses after they gave damaging testimony against him in the January 6th hearings. How serious is that, Attorney Tarver? And I think you're on mute, Attorney Tarver. Oh, we can't hear you, Attorney Tarver.
I'm sorry. Witness tampering is an extremely serious crime, and it is a crime, no question about that. You have to prove that the individual contacted him for the purpose of affecting his testimony. But this is more than just a real charge of witness tampering. What this really is it is a slap, or I would say a kind of a blow off the plate type pitch from Liz Cheney, because what she wants to make sure she does is chill any action that Donald Trump and others may have as far as trying to contact individuals who are involved in this. And let's be real. This is some really seriously damaging stuff to Donald Trump. This is the kind of thing that he would want to contact people about. Now he knows that he's not going to get the opportunity, nor are his people, his staff, his representatives going to get the opportunity to contact people, because it's going to be met with some very swift action. It actually puts Donald Trump and his people in a box.
Wow. Robin, I know you've been watching the hearings. You saw some more. We all saw heard some more damaging testimony yesterday, including connecting the former president directly with the Proud Boys and Oath Keepers. What is the response, and what are you hearing as the response to these revelations now? And you also on mute, Robin.
All right. I'm hearing the same thing I heard when he was president. He's gotten away with all of this time. So I think that there's a smidgen of hope amongst Black people in particular, but we do not see him. We don't have much hope that he will be brought to justice, or that any of the things that he continues to do stops. I mean, he's been witness tampering since the first impeachment hearing. Nothing has been done. And Attorney Tarver is correct. It is a crime to do that. When is he going to pay for the crimes that he has done? How long is it going to take the Justice Department to move? Confidence in the justice system is eroding. Even amongst the legal field. I've spoken with Black attorneys, women attorneys in particular, since Roe v. Wade, and most of them do not have any hope. We're going to continue to do what we do, but we do there is a tinge of bitterness towards the justice system at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. And Mark Thompson, we always appreciate Mark joining us. Mark, so when you look at this in its totality, and there's a couple more hearings to go, where do you now see this leading? I mean, have your thoughts changed from the beginning of this committee to perhaps even the testimony that we heard a couple of weeks ago to now? Has there been any change in your thoughts on this?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me. Let me let you also report that I am currently in Akron now to attend Jalen Walker's funeral, a young man shot 60 times by the Akron police. So, in the midst of these hearings, there's things still happening to our people, in an atmosphere that was encouraged, as we heard in yesterday's testimony, by racism and white supremacy, groups like the Oath Keepers and the Proud Boys. Van Tatenhove, who was an Oath Keeper spokesperson, even testified yesterday that America was or is in fact on the cusp of a civil war. I think, at first I thought they wouldn't have an effect, but I think the way the committee is rolled out and the way they are holding the hearing is not even all at once. It's just like a drip, drip, drip of information. I think gradually there are Americans that are being possibly transformed, and that could affect the elections in November and beyond. Remember, I think I said this before on the show, one of the most important revelations from one of the earlier hearings was when the Secretary of State of Georgia, Raffensperger, said to Trump he couldn't find 11,000 votes because 30,000 Republicans in Georgia in 2022 didn't vote for him. And this was before we heard all of this news about what he was doing with January 6th. So why would 30,000 Republicans in Georgia not vote for Donald Trump? Obviously, they saw things about him that made them feel he was unfit. Imagine how many would feel he is unfit now. And lastly, just let me say quickly, the other attorneys on the broadcast this morning are correct. The Department of Justice has been loath to prosecute. But even Sister Robin mentioned black attorneys. If you watch some of the white legal pundits on television, for the first time, they're admitting, when they didn't before, that Merrick Garland has no choice but to try to prosecute when it comes to witness tampering. Now, if all of them are saying that now, I think Garland has very little room left to avoid it.
Yeah, and James Ray of the Washington Informer, James, is there anything missing that you could see in this presentation that the January 6th Commission has laid out? Is there anything missing?
I don't see. I don't have the foresight or the gift to see into the future about what is missing. But if anything were to crop up, I would not be surprised. I am really encouraged by what Mark is saying, that many Americans are beginning to realize what this guy was really about. He was a mafia don in the White House, and he's acting this way, particularly with this witness tampering, because Donald Trump believes the law does not apply to him. And hopefully that this will have some very positive results on November the 8th. Before that, I believe that a lot of people were just saying, well, where is this headed? So what? Okay, it happened. And even good people were saying that, but this was out in the hinterland saying that. But now I think people see something to this teeth. Where this goes, we don't know. Will there be more revelations? Oh, yeah, but we don't know what it is. And maybe this may be the straw that broke the camel's back.
Well, let me ask you this, Attorney Tarver. The White House, the former White House counsel under Trump, Cipollone, gave some corroboration to some other damaging testimony that happened. The young White House aide who testified a week or so ago about what Trump was doing on January 6th, how he actually directed everything, how he wanted to go to the Capitol, demanded to go to the Capitol. But to have the former counsel offer such testimony, from what we understand, again, he corroborated some damaging testimony. How serious is that too? And isn't it, and not only how serious is it, how rare is that?
It's rare, but it is extremely serious. And here's why it's serious, because what they've done here is they've drawn a direct line in Donald Trump's behavior to criminality. What do we know about this thing so far? Number one, we know that Trump knew there was no fraud because everyone told him that. He's not a child. He's an adult. He's the president of the United States. He has wise counsel that's telling him that. Number two, Trump knowingly pushed forward with those lies, knowing that they weren't true. Number three, he directed a mob to storm the Capitol. And that's what the hearing was really about yesterday, that he directed them. Remember, after that crazy meeting they had, he then turns around, since he can't get his way there, and sends out the tweet telling them to come to the Capitol. Number 4, the mob does come there and they have weapons, and he knows they have weapons. Remember the magnetometers that he said shouldn't be there. And number 5, he refused to tell them to leave the Capitol. A person intends the natural proper consequences of their actions. This is a case that can go to a jury at this point. The question is whether or not the Department of Justice has the resolve to do that. I think they have to do it. I think it's here. I've tried cases and my clients have been convicted on much less evidence. There's no reason why the president should be held to a higher standard.
And so, Robin, he, as Attorney Tarver just laid out, they've laid, Benny Thompson and Liz Cheney and that committee has laid this out, right? It's almost like when police go to the district attorney and lay out a case against a person. In this case, I mean, we've seen it now played out publicly. I asked James what's missing from Merrick Garland's standpoint. Do you see, as Attorney Tarver said, him given any reason not to pursue this?
Well, I think this is a great question. I think that Merrick Garland is what they said he was. He's an institutionalist who is grappling with a hard political subject. And because this country does not generally tend to prosecute former presidents, even though they could have, they have not. And so I think he is weighing what the political consequences are. But I believe what's more important is what the legal consequences of not doing so are. What are the political consequences of not doing so? The next Trump might not be so ignorant, might not be so ugly to the public, might not be so belligerent. And that Trump could be the next Hitler of the United States. And Merrick Garland has to grapple with that. And not holding him accountable is allowing the public to understand that there really is no rule of law in this country. And the next Trump that comes along could be president forever, which is what he wanted to do.
Mark Thompson, you had people die in this. Let's not forget that, right? Including law enforcement officers die in this attack on the Capitol. And they've laid it out, right? That this was all at the behest of Donald Trump. How do you avoid that, Mark, and, avoid prosecuting him under those circumstances? And B, when might a prosecution occur? Because as James alluded to, the midterms are coming. They don't want it to seem political, but how can at this point this seem political when you've seen all of this evidence?
Well, it is interesting. The rumor is that Merrick Garland is making the argument, and apparently made the argument to our DA in Manhattan not to prosecute Trump for fear that it would actually help him. It would have a reverse effect, that it would lead to him being able to raise more money and be a martyr amongst his people. Now, the thing about it is, though, that with all the crimes that Attorney Tarver raised, I think what we heard yesterday for the second time from the committee is that there is one crime that is prosecutable outside of him being president. Most of the other crimes would be crimes that he committed while he was president. Witness tampering is something he's doing today. It would kind of be, to me, like, and I would think I would offer an Al Capone prosecution. You can't get him on everything, but you get him on this one little thing. And so I think the American public understands witness tampering. A lot of people commit crimes all the time, but witness tampering is pretty much cut and dry. It's pretty black and white. And I bet they could honestly show that and maybe even get a conviction on it. And I think that the reason Liz Cheney and others and Benny Thompson are throwing that out there as a hint, witness tampering, is to give Merrick Garland something that he can run with. That is outside of somebody saying, well, you're prosecuting a president for crimes he committed when he was president. You're prosecuting someone today for crimes they're committing today. And I don't think Merrick Garland has a lot of excuses. Remember, never should have been nominated for the Supreme Court in the first place. Merrick Garland was on the prosecutorial team against Marion Barry. So he knows how to put a politically motivated prosecution. This is not politically motivated. The January 6th committee is a congressional committee with subpoena authority. It is a federal crime to tamper with those witnesses. Merrick Garland really has no excuse.
Yeah, well, this is something that obviously we're going to continue to watch. early on, like many, we were just kind of standing on the sidelines and looking to see what unfolds. But so much has unfolded, and so we'll continue to follow that. But Attorney Tarver, I want to go back to you real quick on that. We talked about all the different crimes. People are going to prison. People have been going to prison behind the January 6th insurrection. Again, what type of crimes? We talked about the witness tampering, but what other crimes can Donald Trump face if all things were fair and on the table?
Well, if they're fair, number one, I'd be looking at this entire scenario and saying this is a conspiracy. So our federal RICO statute would cover this, and racketeering and influence over corrupt activities. This is the prototype type of gang activity that they prosecuted the mob for. The fact of the matter is that you've got individuals who are acting to actively influence or obstruct the administration of law, obstruct the congressional actions in dealing with the elections, and all of those are crimes. So what troubles me is that many people are talking about the whole idea of, well, we don't have enough to prosecute. We don't have a direct tie-in. Well, I got to tell you, rarely will you ever, in a RICO or conspiracy case or anything else, get someone who is coming out and saying, let's commit this crime, let's do this criminal act. They won't do that. You look at the actions of the individuals, and there's an inference to be drawn by that. We do it every day. There's no reason why we shouldn't do the same thing with Donald Trump. Now, look, obstructing carries, I believe, up to 20 years. Witness tampering carries up to 20 years. All of these are very serious penalties that come along with those particular crimes. So he's facing some very serious time if the Justice Department decides that they are going to prosecute.
Yeah, James, how compelling, James, was the testimony of these white supremacists, the Proud Boys, Oath Keepers yesterday? How I think one of the Oath Keepers, he even talked about how, they just blindly following Trump. He seems to offer some regret in that. But how compelling was that?
I got something with the Proud Boys because I belong to a church in Washington, D.C., where they tore down our Black Lives Matter banner, and they weren't prosecuted, but I'm not going to get into that. It was very compelling because it shows that these gentlemen were hoodwinked, or they say they were hoodwinked, and they provided examples of how they wanted to do what the leader told them to do. We need to be careful about that term, what the leader wanted them to do. We can go back to Germany in the 1930s about that. And then, they did show some compassion and remorse, particularly with the Capitol police officer who was injured. I think it was compelling. There's just something about me that said that it was just really just dramatic, but it was compelling.
Robin, does that testimony by these self-avowed white supremacists, does it make a difference?
Actually, I could be off point here, but when I was looking at them, I was thinking about where were the Black folk that were influenced by Donald Trump? Why were they not storming the Capitol? Is there a distinction between Black folk and white folk and his influence over them? And it's just a thought that occurred to me. Why were there no Blacks in that? And there were Blacks for Trump. So I believe that the testimony was compelling of the guy who said, I was just a regular father with a regular job. But at what point did he become disenchanted or lose his mind, so to speak, whereby he was just influenced by this man who was a liar from the beginning? There was something about Trump that was compelling to all of these people who just happened to be white storming the Capitol. But that said, I guess as a Black person, I find it hard to just follow someone into the bush and burn. But to the extent that they did, they were, the guy still was like, well, I don't think it was stolen as much, but so he still didn't have that piece that was like, I washed my brain out. So I have mixed feelings about the testimony, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Mark Thompson, I want to segue because you are in Akron, and as you said, for Jalen Walker, and we know what happened there. More than 60 times he was shot. But how about this, Mark? In Arizona, the First Amendment advocates are considering their options in response to an Arizona law signed last week, making it a crime to record video of police officers from closer than 8 feet away. The law was signed by Arizona Governor Doug Ducey. He states that people can be charged with a misdemeanor if they record police from less than 8 feet away. The penalty, 30 days in jail and a $500 fine. So, Mark, it seems like we saw the video with Jalen Walker. We saw the video with George Floyd. In fact, the video of George Floyd is really what got these cops convicted. What are they doing here, Mark? Again, we see the Supreme Court acting, taking away rights. They're coming for all rights, Mark.
Well, yeah, and it's happening in the individual states. Like the spokesperson who testified yesterday for Oath Keepers, he said we were on the cusp and are still on the cusp of a civil war, and that's taking place. Unfortunately, there is no federal oversight or federal governance of local police, just like there's no federal oversight of federal governance when it comes to election systems in all the respective states and cities. So you have 50 or more states and then a myriad number of jurisdictions within those states that just do whatever they want to do. And that's why we have to keep this struggle against police violence alive. I think that struggle is primarily local, but there have to be best practices as to how to engage that struggle on the local level. And that's something that we've got to develop the discipline to do in our movement as a people. Let me say this diplomatically. I'm inspired to say this about something that Robin said when she talked about where were the black folks for Trump, blacks for Trump. Let's face it, in our people and our movement has always in this country historically adopted the principle and ideology of nonviolence appropriately so. And, maybe sometimes that's been to our advantage, but at other times, and I even look here in Akron, there is more emphasis here right now on Black people remaining nonviolent, almost even more emphasis on that than getting justice for Jalen Walker. And so this atmosphere has been created as if we have some history of in all places, Akron, of behaving or reacting to injustice in a violent manner when we don't. And so when we got here, someone was, well, why is there so much more emphasis? To talk about us and to emphasize us being nonviolent, that's fine. We all support nonviolence, but we want the police to be nonviolent too. And if we can't film them, if we can't document them, then what are we doing? There's no accountability. So this is still an uphill battle, and hopefully, I'll say this too. Yesterday, quickly in Congress, you had white members of Congress, former Oath Keepers and Proud Boys, decrying white supremacy and racism. And there's some folk here in Akron who don't want to use that terminology because it's too divisive, and a police department that is encouraging people not to use that terminology because it's too divisive. It's interesting that those terms, which are rarely said in a congressional hearing. How many times have there been congressional hearings when white supremacy and racism and white nationalism and domestic terrorism have been acknowledged all in the same history, in the same hearing, leading the news cycle all over the world? Right. And then right here in Akron, that's something that seems to be taboo to talk about.
Yeah, Attorney Tarver, I want to ask you this because the ACLU and others are saying that they are looking at ways to fighting this Arizona law. And here's what the language says: it is illegal for someone to record law enforcement officers if the person is within 8 feet of an area where the person knows or should quote unquote reasonably know that law enforcement activity is occurring, or if they receive a verbal warning from an officer about the rule. Law enforcement activity could include questioning a suspicious person, conducting an arrest, or handling a disorderly person. Is there anything in that little language right there, Attorney Tarver, that the ACLU could fight?
Well, there's two different things, two different parts to this law. The first is the 8-foot law. Can the government make a standard that says for public safety or governmental interest to keep people 8 feet away? Yeah, they can make that argument because you don't want people involved in perhaps an arrest or putting themselves in a position to get hurt or interfering or obstructing. The problem is we know how this is really going to be used. You really think they're going to measure 8 feet? No, they're going to take people who were 10, 12, 14, and 15 feet away and say that they were 8 feet away and use this against them. But there's a more important thing here, which is the second part of this law, which nobody talks about, which is that you can do this if you have the officer's permission.
Mm-hmm.
Now that's where you're going to have a problem because that is clearly violative of First Amendment, that you have to ask a person's permission in order to be able to record or in order to perform that activity. That's where the ACLU is going to have a handle against this whole thing. Bottom line is we know what this is about. It's about keeping us from what has been one of the most effective tools that we've had, which is recording police activity. And this is the one way they believe that they can push back against it. Bottom line is people are still going to be able to record no matter what, and people need to be encouraged to do that no matter what. That's the only saving grace that we have. Think about what would have happened with George Floyd if there were no video. Think about all of these cases that we've been dealing with, Ahmaud Arbery, all the other cases, if there were no video. Heck, even when there's video, we don't even get justice. But the fact of the matter is, where there is video, at least we now stand a chance.
Yeah, James, final thought, James, on that Arizona law, and then I'll go to Robin, and then Mark, make it plain Thompson.
Well, I'll be in 20 seconds. I agree with Attorney Tarver. I might have been like, well, okay, but when they but when part of the law says that the officer gives you permission to use your own equipment to videotape his job and what he's supposed to be doing, and he's not supposed to be hiding anything, that's where I really, really drew the line, Stacey. This is a bad law.
Yeah. Robin?
Officers are public servants. And if you're not doing anything wrong, then there shouldn't be an issue with us taping you serve the people. The issue we find many times is that officers are not always doing the right thing, and they don't always serve the people. And the camera is one way to keep them held accountable, and we will continue to do that.
Yeah. Mark Thompson?
Just like in the hearing yesterday, it was revealed that Donald Trump didn't want people to know what was being planned, obviously because he knew he was doing something wrong. In Arizona, they don't want officers filmed because they know they're going to be doing something wrong. There should be transparency. It's definitely a terrible law.
Wow, so many rights. There's so many rights that they're coming for, and that isn't that always been the case though. Robin, with the we see with the Supreme Court, they make this ruling, but so many other things are happening too, and so it's throwing rocks and hiding your hand, right?
Absolutely. I mean, I'm very concerned. I think all of us need to be concerned about the erosion of rights piece by piece, and that it's going to take a long time, and we're going to all have to stand for a long time to keep them. They're moving so quickly. What's next? Well, we kind of know what's next.
Well, we had to give the lady the last word. Thanks so much. Check out Mark, Make It Plain Thompson. His look, no better podcast than that. James Wright, check him out at WashingtonInformer.com. Of course, Attorney Tarver. Look, any issues, call Attorney Tarver. He's in South Jersey, and I'm sure he can make arrangements to help you no matter where you are. And of course, Robin Massengill, we all thank you for joining. Let it be known we will see you tomorrow.